Our first speaker wants us all to keep in mind that his presentation tonight is a condensed version of a much longer keynote speech that he's preparing for larger audiences. For the sake of time, he's going to omit the section on vaccination, since he has already covered that in a previous meeting late last year. Dr. Luc Moens, who, as a former research scientist, is starting a new career as a professional science communicator, is on a mission to improve the understanding and appreciation of science by the general public. And in the next presentation, he will touch on 3 scientific areas that are highly controversial: climate science, genetic modification, and, in a longer presentation, vaccines. Our speaker wants to give you a different perspective on what these topics, on these topics, in the hope that it will inspire you to learn more about the real science and to avoid all the blatant misinformation and anti-science nonsense that is flooding the internet. With his presentation, How the War on Science Threatens Us All, welcome Dr. Luc Moens.
Does this sound good? On October 4th of 1957, my favorite year, people were standing outside looking at the night sky. And they were looking at a streak of light going across the night sky that, through the radio, produced a little beep. We are talking about Sputnik, launched by the Soviets on that same day, and everyone around the world was fascinated by this technical advancement. But at the same time, they became very nervous, because now the Soviets were able to put a 186-pound object into orbit and make it fly at a speed of 180,000 miles an hour. This put a lot of pressure on the government to do something against the Soviets, and President Eisenhower decided to rethink the entire space program and put it under one umbrella organization that then became NASA. A little later, in '61, President Kennedy made his famous announcement that he wanted to see a man on the moon and safely return him before the end of the decade. And indeed, that happened, of course, in the summer of 1969 when Neil Armstrong set foot on the moon. And we didn't realize at that time that this was such an incredible collaboration of scientists and engineers around the nation. And not only had it stimulated major advancements in material science, but also it triggered innovation in the life sciences, the physical science, earth sciences, and the health sciences. Things got even better after that. We launched ourselves in the computer age. And now we find ourselves in this incredible information age that allows us to access information with one push of a button. There is a problem. You may have noticed that there are some people on the internet who are experts in their own mind, and it's sometimes as if they have gotten a degree of the University of Google. There's nothing wrong with that, but you need to understand how to get to the information that is correct and scientifically based. Unfortunately, the internet has become a platform for the propagation of a lot of bad information. And I refer now to this age as being the misinformation age. I was not at all surprised when last year I found this article, this cover article in National Geographic magazine that referred to the war on science. And in that article, the author decried the fact that now people are favoring personal beliefs and popular opinion over scientific expertise. Houston, we have a problem. Because if we are not trusting science and innovation anymore, then I truly believe that this war on science will threaten us all. Let me go through 3 different topics where I see a major battle raging against science. And the first one is the battle against climate science. Now let me be very clear. There's not one scientist on this whole planet who believes in global warming. You heard me right. Because belief has nothing to do in science. Science is observation-based, evidence-based. We do not believe the facts until we can measure them. Global warming is happening, whether you believe it or not, and we have the evidence. What is happening is that in the atmosphere, which is a very thin sliver of gases around our planet, there are certain gases that are increasing in concentration and causing global warming, and this is how it works. We know that the sun keeps on heating up the surface of the Earth. We also know that outside this gas layer, we have a very cold environment. Very cold, as cold as can be. When the sun heats up the surface, most of that heat is radiated back into the space, but some of it is trapped inside the gases. That's why we call it the greenhouse effect. Greenhouse gases that cause that effect. One of those gases is carbon dioxide, and you know that is a byproduct of all living organisms, almost all organisms, and it is present in very small amounts in the atmosphere. It is a form of carbon that circulates through the entire ecosphere, and the concentration is normally balanced by 2 major mechanisms. The first one is through absorption by plant material, where it makes plant tissue through photosynthesis. That's what we call a carbon sink. The other carbon sink is actually the absorption of carbon dioxide in the ocean. That's what forms the limestone that makes up the shells of all the small sea organisms. Now we do know that over the last century, longer in fact since the beginning of the industrial age, we've started to burn enormous amounts of carbon that we dug up from the bottom of the Earth, and we have been spewing a lot of carbon dioxide in the air as a result of that. In other words, we had an overproduction of carbon dioxide, and at the same time we've been decimating our forest inventory around the planet, which has now caused a major excess of carbon dioxide that is increasing as we keep on using fossil carbon for our fuel. These are the facts. As a matter of fact, some people started measuring the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere back in 1958, when on the volcano on Big Island of Hawaii, Mauna Loa, the observatory from NOAA started measuring that concentration, and what is really interesting is that it has been going up steadily for the last 50, 60 years. Last year, in 2015, we surpassed for the first time the 400 part per million concentration of carbon dioxide. Very significant, because now the climatologists are really paying attention more than ever before, and the politicians too. Because if we hit 450 ppm, we might be in trouble. That's where that 2-degree increase comes into play that you might have heard about on the news when we had the Paris conference a couple months ago. When we hit that 450 ppm, we might be in trouble. We may have a unleashing of an unstoppable global warming process that will make life very challenging for all of us. Just to give you perspective, before we started burning fossil carbon, before the start of the industrial age, we were at 270 ppm, from what the geologists have told us. Now, the climatologists were wrong. This whole global warming system is going faster than they expected. The climate models on the computers were wrong. That's how serious this is. And for years now, climatologists have been measuring the amount of carbon dioxide and correlated it with all kinds of weather events around the planet. And every year they publish thousands of papers and condense them in these annual reports, of which you see an example here that you can download for free. It's actually, pushing the wrong button here. That is actually something that you can read by yourself. It is written for a lay audience. 800 scientists around the world collect all the information. It is then collected from numerous countries with all the observations around the planet. And that is then, as a whole package of information and literature, reviewed by yet another 200 plus independent scientists. It's an enormous undertaking. Well, it's very disappointing to didn't see Senator Inhofe, who about a year ago had his interesting little circus on the Senate floor where he holds the snowball and he says, I scraped together the snow from outside Capitol Hill. Therefore, there is no global warming on this planet. To me, that sounds like I have a sandwich in my hands. Therefore, global hunger is a hoax. He is representing a whole propaganda machine that is now trying to tell us that there is a 97% consensus of scientists that say that the global warming is human caused, but we need to keep on doubting what those other 3% are saying. What about those scientists that are denying the changes in the climate? Think about this. We had a fight once about tobacco. Even till today, there are scientists that will tell you that tobacco smoking does not cause cancer. That's the 3%. In the time of Ronald Reagan, that's what the tobacco industry was telling us. 97% of the scientists were wrong. Same diatribe. There are people that say that we cannot influence the atmosphere because it's too big. Remember this? 30 years ago, ozone hole. Scientists started to measure the composition of the ozone layer and the whole atmospheric composition, and they saw that there was a hole forming over Antarctica that was getting bigger than normal. It fluctuates seasonally, but this time it became much bigger than they expected. They went up there, took samples, and found out all the chemistry that was at the basis of this phenomenon. They found out that the ozone was being destroyed by refrigerants we were using in the AC systems, our cars, our refrigerators, and so forth. Those gases were dumped in the atmosphere after usage of the appliances, and with the sunlight, it triggered a number of chemistries that destroyed the ozone. The scientists had a big battle with politicians and industry. They won it. We established the Montreal Protocol in 1987, and now all these refrigerants are banned. We have come up with better ones that are as efficient, if not better. The hole is closing, but it will take another 40 years for it to close completely. So what do we need to do? We need to conserve energy in the sense that we need to be more efficient with it and produce less carbon dioxide. And we need to transition. We've been telling you this for decades now. We need to transition to solar energy in all its forms. Not the solar energy that's stored in coal, petroleum, and gas. That's for sissies. This is the real technology now for the future. And every poor country can afford to install this because it is distributed energy. At the same time, we need to absorb more carbon. And we'll do that if we green up this planet again. I'd like to see 1 tree planted for every barrel of oil that comes out of the ground. I don't know why they never thought about that. There are people that worry though. The climate scientists and the people in the military, because they are now looking at scenarios where climate changes can cause population migration, drought situations that cause wars. Wars, we all know about it, they're already happening everywhere. This could create a national security issue for all of us. Climate scientists, military, what are the politicians doing in this country? That's the battle. The second area that I'd like to touch on is also very controversial. As you know, it's about genetic engineering of our food. And I'm always surprised how much people whine about the food that we can buy in the store. The richness, the diversity, the quality, the freshness of it. Whether it comes from traditional or organic farming doesn't matter. These farmers from either side want to produce quality fruits and vegetables. They have to really worry about other things. They have to worry about pest control, insects, weeds, bacteria, viruses, and on top of that now the pending climate changes that could cause extreme drought, which is already happening in California, for instance, or extreme rain, depending on where you are. Temperatures go up, you get more rainfall too. Now traditionally we have been able to make more robust crops that can survive all these attacks from nature. And one of the approaches has always been cross-pollination of species and creating hybrids that are stronger and more robust and sometimes have better taste and better nutritional value. What if I tell you that for the last at least 5 decades, if not longer, we have created genetic mutants? You take a seed, you bombard it with nuclear radiation or with cancer-causing chemicals, and you damage the DNA. It's the crude sledgehammer approach of changing DNA of a plant. And then, if that seed actually survives that treatment, it might have a trait that you want. Better color, better nutrition, higher vitamin content, particular flavoring, whatever. If you're lucky, that takes thousands of trials and errors for finding the right outcome. So 30 years ago, scientists came up with gene splicing. Instead of using the sledgehammer with chemicals or radiation, they said, why don't we learn to genetically manipulate by going after specific genes? We can take certain out, transpose them into another organism, and see if it expresses itself in a better trait for that edible product, and create a more robust plant, if you will. It's a lot better approach. It's a lot less hit or miss than what we were using before. Here's an example of where GMO technology can really have extraordinary benefits. There is a bacterium called Bacillus Thuringiensis that is sometimes abbreviated by BT. That might ring a bell in your mind. It's a bacillus that forms these little bright colored or little crystals inside the cell wall. Those are toxins. And when that bacterium is suspended in water, you can spray it on your plants and it will kill insects. It's the favorite pesticide for the organic farmers. And they go after caterpillars. The caterpillar eats the bug gets into the intestines of the caterpillar, and the caterpillar is going to have a very painful death, as in dissolving the entire digestive system of that caterpillar. Very efficient. And the cotton industry went after this, and they said, well, we can use this on cotton because it's a widely used or widely grown crop around the world. And what they found out is that those water suspensions need to be applied 6 times before all the bugs are gone on average. That's expensive. Whenever the farmer is spraying it around, he's inhaling it. It causes respiratory problems. So the geneticist said, why don't we create a GMO of the cotton plant, take the actual genetic material of the bacterium, insert it into the cotton, and now the cotton plant is going to express the toxin in the cell material. So whenever a bug sits on that cotton and starts to chew on it, it will ingest the toxin and die. The farmer is not exposed to the toxin anymore. Here is an interesting example that I'd like to pay extra attention to. And some of you may have seen it in the news. But for the last year or so, the citrus growers in Florida have been up in arms about a bacterium that's decimating all the orchards. I'm not kidding you. It might be that within the next 2 years, we may not see any orange juice on our shelves anymore. It is spreading to Texas and California. It was a bacterium imported by a traveler, probably got it on his shoes, walked around in the orchard, and spread the bacterium that's killing the plants. Instead of the lush orange fruit, what you get is this very hard, greenish ball of something that doesn't even look like anything you want to eat. So this is a GMO story in the making. They're now trying to insert a gene from spinach and put that in existing plants, existing citrus plants, to make them more robust. There's something about the genetic makeup that might make them resistant to that bacterium. So this could save the citrus industry. The same has happened with the papayas in Hawaii. They were being killed completely. And it's a GMO species that actually saved the entire papaya field or industry in Hawaii. Now, there are people that will tell you that GMOs are obnoxious, they're bad for your health, they will turn your kids into zombies. It's true. There are people that say that we're now making frankenfood. It's true, because it's on the internet. That's where I saw it. And I go to Facebook and I see thousands of people every day that tell me that same thing. Well, it's all bogus, and I will tell you why. Do you know this? What is this?
Sweet potato.
Sweet potato. Give me the names of a few stores where you can buy sweet potato.
King Soopers,
King Soopers.
Safeway, Whole Foods.
Whole Foods? Really?
They don't have them?
Give me some more names.
Sprouts.
Sprouts? Safeway? Vitamin College? Organic stores?
Walmart.
Walmart? In the organic section? Let me tell you a little story about sweet potatoes. Last year, I found this paper in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science, one of the high-level scientific journals. A collaboration between a team from my alma mater, Ghent University in Belgium, a team in Peru, China, and Georgia, got together and they started looking at the genetic makeup of sweet potatoes. They found out that through back calculation and following the entire genetic lineage of the different cultivars, and there are about 265 of them, they found out that 8,000 years ago, a bacterium called Agrobacterium infected a wild potato, and over that time, till now, has evolved into the sweet potato that we all like so much. We can still find the remnants of the genetic material of that bacterium in our current potatoes. Now, who has turned into zombies?
I did that my sister.
Isn't it time we all... I have nothing against Whole Foods, but this is a GMO, right?
Yeah.
Because, frankly, what's happening here is that we have a bacterium infecting a plant and triggering a reaction in the plant that changes the plant. And we may know it from, for instance, these galls that you can find on plant leaves, or even these oak trees that have these nodules on the trunks. That's all caused by Agrobacterium. Well, a company like Monsanto uses that principle. It has learned to do what the bacterium does. And that's how we can transfer DNA in other host plants. So we have a natural GMO. So be careful when someone says it's GMO-free. Look at the science. Ask hard questions. There are scientists that worry about other things when it comes down to genetic engineering. And there is another battle brewing around the world against vitamin A deficiency. It's a deficiency that, as you may be aware of, causes blindness among people that just are not able to build up enough chemicals in their retina and therefore become totally blind. It's irreversible. At the same time, the vitamin A also stimulates the immune system to where children are becoming very vulnerable to, for instance, the bad effects of measles, diarrhea, and especially malaria, which makes it then even more problematic. I was wondering how widespread this is around the world, and everything that you see in the red or the brown color, all the poor countries, if you will, the tropical areas, they all have high incidence of vitamin A deficiency among children and pregnant women. The stats are staggering. Every year, 19 million pregnant women are affected. 190 million children suffer from it, with every year 500,000 cases of irreversible blindness popping up. Of the children below 5 that get this kind of problem, they will die when they're born at the age of 5 at a rate of about 1 to 2 million every year. That's how serious this is. Now, we don't pay attention to vitamin A deficiency in our country because we all know we need to eat our carrots, right? That's what Grandma always said. And that is simply because in the carrot you have this orange color, this orange chemical that is called beta-carotene, very simple name to remember. And in the body it's broken down into 2 molecules of vitamin A. That's all the chemistry I'm going to tell you now. But this vitamin A builds up in the retina of the eye. And if you don't have enough vitamin A, that's where you become blind. We don't have that problem because, of course, we have a lot of colored foods. And we have an enormous variety of different foods that have vitamin A and all the other essentials. But what do you do if you live in a country where all you have is rice, which is the only staple food available, and on top of that, it's one of the least nutritional staples out there. For years, and UNICEF has been working on mitigating the problems of vitamin A deficiency through supplementation of children. But you know how that goes. You don't have the infrastructure. There is a war. There is no good road system. Delivery systems are poor. Kids don't get enough of the vitamin. They have been experimenting with fortification of the food staples in those areas, basically spiking the local foods with vitamin A and get that to the children, but same problem. So the scientists went after that, and they said, why don't we try to create a rice that will produce its own beta-carotene, instead of us having to give it to the child afterwards. And so they found a way to genetically modify rice, and this is what they did. They took a flower like a daffodil that is known to produce a lot of beta-carotene, and they knew a lot about the genetic makeup of those flowers because that's what flower breeders do. Well, they took the genes from that flower and they had to then put it in the rice plant. Now, how do you do that? Well, again, you go back to the bacterium. And they found the bacterium, the soil bacterium. They applied Monsanto technology, which, by the way, Monsanto gave away for free. They had a license on this technology, but they gave it away for free because they insisted that this should succeed for humanitarian purposes. People don't tell you that on the way. The bacterium then got infected with the gene from the flower, and then the bacterium would attack the rice plant and basically create what is now known as golden rice. You see the difference. You know exactly what's going on here. The rice contains all the beta-carotene you want and is supposedly good for helping the kids. 1 cup a day, and they have whatever they need. But this was a reaction. In the Philippines, of all places, there were protests immediately against the local rice research facilities. They busted into the test fields and they destroyed them completely. According to legend, I don't know, I don't think it's a legend, the farmers who were about to cultivate this rice were standing by with tears in their eyes. because they knew how valuable this rice would be for the whole population. The farmers are smart people everywhere. If someone makes an allusion to the problems of GMOs and is just poo-pooing the whole field without any distinction or understanding of what's going on and why we develop them, all you have to do is ask them a simple question. We know that we are dealing with an explosion of our world population. Look at where it's going in 2050. We have climate change that's already causing a lot of stress on arable lands. Soil degradation is a global problem. More people, less cultivatable land. How much more food are we going to need for those people? And according to the Food and Agriculture Organization, this is what we're going to need. Let that sink in. The only way we can do that is if we keep on creating better species of plants that are robust, more nutritional, and easier to grow under the much more difficult conditions. One last example is something I'm very excited about. There are plants like legumes, soy, peas, and all these special vegetables that we like so much. I like peas. Those plants have a very unique capability in that they can trap the nitrogen from the air and trap it in the root system because they contain nodules on the root system that have bacteria in them. And those bacteria can convert the nitrogen from the air into a fertilizer for the root system. Not all plants have that. And now the geneticists are looking at genetically modifying plants like wheat, corn, and rice. Imagine if we could grow plants without having to throw all that fertilizer on the ground the way we do it now. It's causing so many problems. Again, GMO technology can create enormous benefits here. And we need to be part of the conversation instead of going against the scientific world. We need to ask questions. We need to keep an eye on what they're doing. Absolutely. But we need to ask the questions. And we need to learn. Because this is the alternative. And unfortunately, there are too many people already in this situation around the planet. You don't have to go further than California to see what could happen. This is where I would shift into my third module, which I will not do. But I'd like to leave you with a thought. With all the controversies, I see a repeat of what happened 400 years ago to Galileo when he stood in front of the Spanish Inquisition. And he was put under house arrest first and then later thrown into prison. He suffered for the rest of his life because he made one statement. Through direct observation, he had noticed that the Earth is not the center of the universe, it's the sun. And the Earth is rotating around the sun. For that simple statement, he was thrown in jail. Now we have anti-science movements that are making science really difficult. And they're now in political circles that make it even more difficult to listen to the diatribe in the presidential election. It's becoming very obvious on whose side they're taking. This is the problem we have. And my question to you is, who are you going to listen to? The people that have no education about these topics, are not willing to listen, are not willing to learn, that are only posting stuff on Facebook without any knowledge or background or expertise? Or are you going to listen to people that are in the front line trying to solve the problems and give their heart and soul to that process? This is Toastmasters.
I thought your presentation was excellent, Luc, in terms of your appearance, very professional, yet you weren't in a tie, you weren't like that, you actually were dressed very, very credibly for the topic that you were covering. You also had a very relaxed manner. You had great presence with your technology. You had your clicker. You were very at ease with that. And I will say that one of the things that I noticed is that the way you put your hand in your pocket a couple of times, it really worked for you. And I really think that you might consider doing this for a TED Talk, because it's that kind of an idea that matters. We're spreading ideas that matter, and I can see you doing this as a TED Talk. So I'd like to open this up for a general evaluation, and everyone, if you are saying something that someone has already said, please just say pass on that. I'll start with you, Dennis.
Luke, I just suggest at the beginning, maybe you just put the Sputnik up there, get the noise of the beep, 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 then open. Gets everybody's attention, it's quiet in the room, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, and then you start it.
Well, Luke, I thought that was just a professional presentation. Your timing, your sense of connection with the audience were outstanding, and I appreciate that you're dealing with controversial topics. One thought that I have, just my opinion, that you might consider focusing more on encouraging dialogue to avoid polarizing the audience. That way, they will even more appreciate the strength of your well-crafted argument.
That's the health intention of this kind of talk. I appreciate it.
Look, I thought, as usual, your visuals on the screen were excellent. One thing that might get it a little closer is if you could personalize some of the stories with people that you knew and dated, that sort of thing. That's the only thing that I can possibly think would improve the speech.
And then pass.
I could go on. I'm pretty certain you're probably one of the most brilliant people I know, and I love listening to you speak. This was a lot of information in a half an hour. I'm thinking the first one and the second one could be, unless it's a lecture, 2 different speeches, and you were more relaxed and it felt more entertaining and easy to understand for the second topic than the first. But I loved it all.
I have a whole list of notes for you. Hold that there. Pointing fingers, pointing fingers.
I didn't point my finger.
No. Multiple times. Many, many times.
You're the only one who has ever given me that comment. I don't know if that's really...
Watch the video. Watch the video.
Really?
Oh, yeah. So, what Rich said, it's going back to that why. And I think you hit it right on the head. Because you are talking, you're talking to people like my sister, who should be a zombie. And that's exactly right. What is the why? I mean, so they want to jump on those bandwagons because it's easier to dismiss all these guys who say that they're behind there. And there's so many things that you had that was so great that we actually pull that out and make them think, oh, you mean GMO doesn't mean it's always about chemicals? You mean GMO has to be done with a daffodil or spinach? Really interesting. And I think those are some of the things that can really, you're not talking to your people, you're talking to people like me. And that was like, wow, I didn't know that. So there's a...
Jim? Martin. Go.
I really liked it. My recommendation is the theme was the war on science, and you did have some headlines. They went by too quickly. I couldn't see them. So maybe some of those headlines that are counterintuitive, that are negative, so people can think about them. And also, like Rich said, touch your head, touch your heart, touch your hand, that emotional component. What's the danger to me? How am I going to feel?
You were personable. You had an attitude. You were willing to piss some people off a little bit. That broke you away from being the cold scientist to the man with the heart. Keep more of that, and I think more of the subject is going to come through.
Thank you very much. I'm going to turn it back over to Rich.